So, welcome everybody to this Congressional App Challenge event, our back to school webinar before we get to our contest deadline this year. Today's session is titled Creating a Generative AI Chatbot App Using MIT App Inventor. And we are so excited to have some of the MIT App Inventor team here today to talk to you guys a little bit about how you can go about doing this. This is going to be a really fun event. So my name is Joe Alessi. I am the program director here at the Congressional App Challenge, and I'm so excited. We've had such strong interest in this year's Congressional App Challenge, and such great interest in today's event. So we're really looking forward to this. Just some housekeeping before we get started. If you are a Congressional App Challenger, somebody who is in the process of applying to this year's Congressional App Challenge, we are exactly 2 weeks out from the deadline. And so hopefully you're putting the finishing touches on your app. Maybe you're here today to supplement something that you're working on. Just keep in mind, you've got 2 weeks to go before your submission's due. And so make sure to get those applications submitted prior to the November 1st deadline so that we can make sure that your member of Congress sees your app and you have an opportunity to be honored alongside hundreds of other students at the Capitol this spring as part of our Congressional App Challenge class of 2023. So with that, I'd like to turn this presentation over to the folks that you're here to hear from and you're here to learn from. And to do that, we've got a number of folks who are involved in the MIT App Inventor program, including Prerna Ravi, who is a PhD student at MIT and works pretty closely with the MIT App Inventor team. She's going to lead you along with her team through the rest of the session today, but I will be here to answer any questions in the Q&A panel. If your teams have any questions or anything, just please let us know. Otherwise, Prerna, please take it away.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Hello everyone. It's really nice to have you here today. And as part of today's workshop, we're gonna have you first learn a little bit about what MIT App Inventor is, and also ultimately create a generative AI chatbot using the tool available there. So let's start off with some introductions. So first of all, I'll introduce
I can't see the slides moving. I
Oh,
assume you change the slide.
is it moving?
Oh, yes, now.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Cool. I'm Prerna. I'm a CS PhD student at MIT. I was also an undergrad at Georgia Tech, where I majored in computer science, and I had concentrations in UI UX design and artificial intelligence. Um, Currently, I'm doing a lot of research in AI literacy, so I'm trying to understand how we can better learn about AI tools and also educate others about it. So how do you understand how tools work in the back end? What do you need to know about AI? What the implications are of using AI tools on a daily basis, and how we can go about using it responsibly and ethically as well. So my primary research is in educational technology. So I look to build tools that are inclusive in the classroom for a wide range of communities, including differently abled groups, as well as socially marginalized communities in developing nations. So in the past few years, both during my undergrad and now during my PhD at MIT, I've worn many different hats. So I've played many different roles, one as a UX researcher, so a user experience researcher, but also as a curriculum designer. I've developed a lot of curriculum within education for teachers, for students, for parents. And I've also, in the past, worked as a software developer through various internships in my undergrad, which I can talk about a little bit later. And I've also been a teacher in the past. So I have one tip for you guys, since a lot of you might be in high school thinking about applying to colleges. And as you start thinking about the application process, maybe it's super daunting. Maybe you're thinking about what college entails. So the one tip I have is, like, don't be afraid to try out new things. Like, there are a lot of things like available out there, but there is no right or wrong answer. So you just have to sort of try it out and see if that's something you like. Now, the one good thing I can say about college for sure from my experience is that you always have the option of switching. So if you don't like some activity that you take up, no one's going to say that you have to continue going down that route and there is no other way out. So try to keep an open mind, as in when you try out new topics that seem to be of interest and you take a stab at it, try to pursue it and see if that's something you potentially enjoy and if you have found your passion. And if that's not a field you expected to, that's also completely fine. The only thing I would say is like, don't freeze. Like if something happens or you're not interested in something, like just try to keep going and you'll eventually find an area that you're super passionate about within your undergrad, whether that's your major, whether it's a subfield within the major that you want to work on, like whether it's a particular club that you want to join, whether it's research you want to do. Just try to keep an open mind and try to take advantage of as many opportunities as you can that are thrown at you in college. Like college is filled with resources, filled with people around you who have a lot to offer. So try to take advantage of that. So for instance, I found my passion after joining research in undergrad, and it was not conventional for people to do research in their undergrad, but I thought that that's something that I would want to try out. So I just tried it out by fluke, and I realized that that's something that I really enjoy. And I started doing research in the education field. But as you can see, like I wouldn't have realized that until I had like pursued that research project. So just try to keep some like goal in mind and just keep going. And I just picked it up because I thought it would be interesting after reading about it online. Um, cool. I'll pass it on to Gisela. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gisela. I am a senior, so I'm in my last year studying computer science and Spanish. Within App Inventor specifically, I'm mostly focused on the data science team. Basically, how are we able to take in sensor data or sensor information and have App Inventor give us some sort of analytical insights into trends. I'm also part of the Incarcerated Veterans Program. We kind of call that the main state prison program, where we help teach App Inventor curriculum to incarcerated veterans. And then the last part I'm a part of is the prompt engineering team with Apply. This is part of the generative AI part of App Inventor, and I'm specifically focusing on trying to improve the performance of our prompts. So outside of school and research, I also do fun things like here at MIT. There's so many activities that are available. I'm specifically doing cheerleading. I'm co-captain and I'm part of the gymnastics team. So that shows that like, even though MIT is a really tough place, there's still plenty of avenues for you to explore your options, as Purna said, and to sort of find things that you love and enjoy doing outside of academics, right? So my tip for you guys would be to kind of, going off of what Purna was saying, she talked about trying new things, right? But at the same time, you don't want to be trying everything because there's only so much time in a day and you want to focus your time on the things that you really care about. So that's why my tip for you guys is to pick just a few things that you have found that you really enjoy doing and to show commitment and passion by sticking through it. So for me, that was Girl Scouts. I actually joined Girl Scouts when I was in 4th grade, and I did it all the way up until I finished high school, which is pretty rare for Girl Scouts. So that just is another way that you guys can do things that show your abilities outside of like AI, computer science aspect. So I'll have more tips for you guys towards the end at the panel.
Cool.
Hola, hello everyone. My name is Isabela Sanchez. I'm an international student from Peru. I'm currently studying computer science and education at Wellesley College. And as part of Wellesley College, I can also take classes at MIT, do research at MIT, work, and just have fun around. So I want to talk a little bit about that experience too. Currently, I'm working on the App Inventor lab. Well, I'm focusing on the education curriculum, but also on the main state prison project and Apply prompt engineering too. So it's like, oh, with Gisela and David, we see each other a lot. And then fun things that I do in college, I always love music. So when I arrived here to the States, I was like, I want to continue pursuing music, whether it's like taking some classes or just joining a cappella group. So I am part of MIT Wellesley Tunes. That it's a cool a cappella that is cross campus between MIT and Wellesley. And also I am a DJ at the college radio here. So I have my radio show every Saturday, 8 p.m. And it's just a fun thing to do, you know, because I think college is here. When you arrive to college, you want to pursue a lot of things, but also you need to remember your past passions. For example, when I was in middle school, I loved writing, and then in high school, I loved technology. But when I arrived to college again, writing was something that I needed for every course, and I started writing again. I continue with music. So that would be a little advice. Like if you have a past passion that you stop pursuing one time, why not again in college? Maybe that could lead to something even bigger. And my tip in general in life and also in college applications will be that the most fun part of the learning process is when the mentee becomes a mentor. I have a lot of friends that are applying to college now, and most of them told me, oh no, I don't have extracurriculars, I don't have nothing to show, but actually they have been doing like volunteer for years teaching, and whether it's programming, robotics, or just like literacy in my country. So it's like, actually you have done too many things, you have been mentoring too many people, you have been changing lives like while teaching. So if you have a passion and you feel like you are really so passionate about this, why don't try to teach it? I always think like that, because also when you teach something, you actually understand better the topics. You feel like more expert every time you teach it again and again. So I don't know, I always advise people like to take that little step that makes them from being a mentor from being a mentee to a mentor. It's fun, and that will be my tip.
Cool. Thank you. David?
Hi, everyone. I'm David. I'm a software developer at the MIT App Inventor team. I manage, fix bugs, maintain on the backend side of App Inventor. A lot of the things that you will be doing today, I have contributed a few things in the chatbot components. On the second point, I added that one of my hobbies is watching movies. And I added this because when I was your ages during middle school, high school, my actual dream was to become a movie director. I have passion in watching movie. I analyze movies, but now I'm working as a software developer, and I wanted to kind of make a point that life is like a box of chocolate. You never know what you get. And I kind of want to connect with what Prena said here, is that I know some of you may be confused what a career I should pursue, but I would say do not be too stressed about it. Just enjoy your everyday life, and things come together, and you will eventually find what you like if you continuously work hard. So that's one thing I want to say. And a tip I wanted to say today is many things in your life can be improved by technology. And that is also what the ethos of App Inventor is. Today, all of you are going to learn a wonderful technology that has many, many potential to improve many things in your life. So I hope everybody enjoys.
Cool. Thank you so much, guys. And based on what we just mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A, and we will try our best to either answer it in the chat itself, or we'll come back to it at the very end. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of this workshop where you can ask us any questions you want regarding MIT, regarding applying to colleges, regarding what it feels like being in the field of computer science or programming. So please feel free to ask anything you want in the chat, and we'll try our best to answer it. Cool. So first of all, you guys might be wondering what MIT App Inventor is to begin with. So App Inventor is this free open source like platform that's available for anyone to use. And it allows anyone, whether that's an adult, whether that's you students, whether it's an educator, a hobbyist, it allows anyone to basically come in and create mobile applications. So the apps that you use on a daily basis, App Inventor is able to create some of those applications or replicate it. And it does that through a very simple drag and drop interface. So it involves programming, but it's a very simple form of programming that we will show you later on today in the workshop. So it allows you to create apps very seamlessly in the process. So a little bit of history regarding how App Inventor came into place. Like it was founded in 2007 by researchers at MIT and Google. And the main vision was to enable anyone on this planet to be able to create mobile apps for real effective change in their communities. It was to empower people around us. So, a little bit about what App Inventor does beyond that. So, through App Inventor, we not only want students to learn about how to build apps, but also to practice other skills that are critical to succeeding in any field that they decide to pursue. So, we promote design thinking, which uses a 5-step process to critically analyze and build applications, right from coming up with a very vague idea to really formulating it further, prototyping it, and testing it out. And through block-based coding, which we will show you in this workshop, we also aim to advance computational thinking skills. And one of our final goals is to make this tool as inclusive and widely available as possible to everyone across the globe, including those communities that are on the margins or those that have been historically underrepresented in technology. So this is an App Inventor generative AI workshop. So now the question is, what is generative AI? So generative AI is this buzzword that we are all hearing about today, like in today's world, especially in the last few months. That basically refers to any model that's able to create brand new output from the data that's already available out there on the internet. So the internet has a large amount of data, whether that's text-based data, whether that's videos, whether that's images, etc. So the idea is that these algorithms, they're able to take those vast amounts of data and they're trained on those and they're able to produce brand new images or brand new photos that we have never seen anywhere before. So generative AI models, they are basically able to learn patterns from the existing data that we have provided them with, and they're able to look at that internal structure and generate new data that has very similar characteristics. So this is an interface that a lot of you might have seen. This is ChatGPT. This is a very common example of generative AI that a lot of us have interacted with and is super prevalent in today's world. So ChatGPT is this large language model chatbot, basically, that was developed by this company OpenAI, and it enables all users to refine and steer a conversation depending on what format they want to follow, what style they want, what level of detail they want to engage with a chatbot, etc. And this particular model, it can answer questions and it can assist you with several tasks such as like composing emails, composing essays, and even writing code. So this is an example of a generative AI powered application. It's called Calmify, and it was actually built within App Inventor itself. So we're just trying to show you an example of what a generative AI powered app might look like. And this is something similar to what we'll also be going over in our workshop today. It's a mental health application, this particular app that I'm showing as an example. And here is a video that sort of goes over what this app did and how it was built and what the purpose is. So this is just to give you an example of what this might look like. So I'm going to play this.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn.
I'm Jack.
And today we will be explaining Calmify, and our inspiration behind this app was to advocate for mental health wellness through a journaling system.
And what makes our app unique is its special AI emotion detection. So after we finish setting up this new user account, the first thing we'll be greeted with is the journaling page. And the different happy and sad emojis you see up there help the user to track their mood across past journal entries.
And here are some different journaling scenarios, and a user will have the ability to record some roses, thorns, and emotions throughout their day.
They can also add a picture, a really nice picture, in my opinion, and they can add some activities they did during the day. And so after finishing up their journal entry and submitting, the app will take the journal entry and plug it into OpenAI software to detect how the day was, what emotions filled it, loneliness, happiness, stress, for example, and will recommend a personalized arrangement of features to help address any negative emotions present. If it's a happy day, it might just congratulate the user. If it was a stressful one, it could recommend some stress relieving resources, and we will be going over these resources next.
All right, here are some modules, and you can actually edit your profile. So your first module is a personal AI friend you can chat with.
Our next module or resource is the memory lane, where you can view memories you added or the app added from your happy journal entries. And researchers have found that looking and reminiscing over your past happy memories can help improve one's mood.
All right, our next module is an activity planner. So based on the activity you have chosen, the app will design an activity plan based on your location.
Next are multiple music therapies you can use to calm yourself, meditate, or to help you fall asleep.
Our next module are stress relief techniques, including paper ripping and pillow punching.
Finally, we have some help resources, including hotlines and what they're about. You can dial from the app directly if you need to.
Thank you.
So yeah, this was a very quick example of what an application might look like when it is built within App Inventor and which uses generative AI in the background. So let's move on. So yeah, today we're going to be building a ChatGPT powered voice application in particular for college admissions guidance. So we thought this topic would be super relevant to a lot of you because you're currently in the process of deciding what career you might want to pursue, whether you want to apply to a specific college, or maybe what major you want to do and what colleges would be good for that particular major. So this app will sort of help you potentially brainstorm some of those ideas. So as a first step, we would like all of you to, as a first step, actually, make sure that you have a laptop that's connected to a very stable like Wi-Fi network. And also make sure that you have a phone next to you, a smartphone that's connected to the same Wi-Fi network. Like that's a disclaimer. We want to make sure that you have that. And as a first step, what we're going to have you do is you need to navigate to code.appinventor.mit.edu. David will put the link in the chat for you guys to pull the link from. I'll give everyone like just a second to do so. You need to go to this particular URL. This is the URL on which you're going to be like building the application today. So make sure that you have this pulled up in a new tab so that you can walk through the entire tutorial with me. The next step would be to download this particular file. So this, you can type this URL directly into your browser. It's just tinyurl.com/chatgpt college app. If you can navigate to that and download the Google Drive link from it, it'll be great. It should download a specific file for you. Are there any questions? Like I'll wait here for just a second so that you do the first two steps. One, navigate to the website, and two, download this particular file from this link. Cool. Now, the first thing you're going to do is when you navigate to code.appinventor.mit.edu, this is the screen that you will see. So what we would like for you to do is just for the purposes of this tutorial, you can continue without creating an account. Maybe later on, like after this session, if you want to play around with this tool more, which I hope that you want to do, then you can create an account so that you can save some of your work for later. But for this, let's just continue without using an account. So click on that particular button. And then following that, this is the screen that you should see ideally. So there should be a code that shows up in the middle of the screen, as you can see over here. And maybe copy paste that code somewhere locally just so that you can maybe come back to this particular project if like later on you want to reference it so that you don't lose your work because you're continuing without using an account. Just make sure you copy paste the code. I'll give you 1 second to do that before I go ahead. Cool. Following that, you can hit continue. And then this is the next screen you'll see. Again, you can just hit continue on the screen. This is a screen introducing you to App Inventor. This is a video that you can probably go and watch later if needed. But yeah, for now, you can hit continue. And this is the next screen that you will see. So this is the screen on which you ideally, after logging into MIT App Inventor, you can start creating a project within which you'll start creating an app. So for the purposes of this tutorial, just because we have very limited time, what we're going to have you do is we have provided a particular file from where you're going to be pulling some of the scaffolded code and you'll be making some changes to it rather than building an entire application from scratch. So for now, you'll just hit close, but ideally you would want to create a blank project or like start with one of these tutorials to get familiar with the tool. But for today, just hit close. We'll show you how to go about it. So just hit close on the screen. Following that, you're going to click on the projects drop down at the top left-hand corner. And there's an option that says import project with that extension .aia from my computer. So you're going to click on that within the drop down. And this will basically pull up this window on which you can choose a file from your computer. And this is where you're going to choose the file that we asked you to download, the ChatGPT College app. It has the same extension .aia. So select that particular file from your laptop and upload it. And once you upload it, this is what you should see. I'll again give a second for you to locate the file. Cool. Once you locate the file and upload it, you just have to hit OK. And yeah, once you have this set up, we are ready to proceed. And this is where the fun part starts. So as a first step, just so that you know how app building works, like developing an application works, there are typically two parts to it. The first step is designing what the application will look like. So what buttons you would want on the screen, what text you would want on the screen, like what are the user interface elements that you would want to see when the user pulls up your app on their phone. So that's the first step, designing what those elements will be and where they'll be placed on the screen. So for today's application, we want the app to look like the screen on the right. And this is what I'm going to show you on the next screen. So once you upload your file, this is what you should ideally see. So this is the main MIT App Inventor like user interface within which you're going to start developing your application. So let me explain a little bit like what this entails, because there are a lot of options here, so it might be a little overwhelming, but don't get overwhelmed. We're going to walk you through every step on the screen. So as a first step, you should understand that the thing highlighted here, like this particular box, it has a bunch of components within it. So these components are basically your user interface elements. So on this particular screen, we have a bunch of labels, a button, like a chart. So all these interface elements will show up in this particular box as you keep adding them. The thing that you see on the extreme left, which is highlighted on this screen, are the interface elements that you can add to it. So the one on the previous screen was basically what's already in your application. And the one over here is what you would ideally want to add more to your application if needed, like additional components. And this thing on the extreme right are the properties for a specific component that you have selected. So in this particular case, for example, as you can see, screen 1 is highlighted here, right? So within properties, you can edit certain like, I guess, features related to screen 1, whether it's setting a background color to your screen, whether it's adjusting the height for a certain sort of width of your cell phone, or maybe adding a background image to it that you would want to be laid across your entire application, etc. So properties allows you to change the color, the text, anything related to the appearance of a specific component on your screen. And just as a disclaimer, so for the purposes of our workshop, this entire design has already been created for you. So you just have to like look through it and follow along with me for now. You don't have to edit anything just yet. So just try to play around with what's on the screen, but don't make any changes to it just yet. Just listen and follow along. So yeah, okay. Within your screen, you have a bunch of user interface elements. So the first element over here is a label. So label is basically like any text that you'd want to show up on the screen. So this is labeled as label 1. This is just so that we have some sort of identifier associated with the label so that we can use it later on. And as you can see, the text that we have given this particular label is talk with ChatGPT, and that's what's shown up on the screen in the mobile phone as well. The second component is a chart. component. So in this case, the chat is basically just a button. And we have actually given this button a specific background image. So this button in this particular case is actually the picture of a microphone. So the microphone button is what you're going to be clicking in order to interact with ChatGPT when you test out your application. So as you can see, you can upload any sort of media. So in this case, we have uploaded like a mic.png file, and that's the image that we have given this particular button as well, which ultimately shows up on the screen. The next button is a restart button, and this is the button that you can use in case you want to reset your entire conversation and start over with ChatGPT. So rather than continuing on an existing thread of a conversation, if you want to just erase the entire thing and restart a brand new conversation with ChatGPT, this is the button that you would use to do that. And as you can see, it's given a specific text, new conversation, which indicates that you can have a new conversation with ChatGPT. Now, apart from the obvious elements that are on the screen, which is the label and the two buttons that I just spoke about, we can also have these things called invisible components on our UI. So these are components that are not necessarily things that show up actively on the screen, but they still are very vital to the functionality of our application. So in this case, the idea is that you will have a conversation with ChatGPT orally, like through this app interface. So in order to be able to do that, you'll obviously need something called a speech recognizer, which will take the text from the like words that you're speaking out and convert that to text and supply that to ChatGPT. So it recognizes the speech or recognizes the words that you are saying out loud when interacting with the application. The second component would be taking that text and then feeding that to ChatGPT. And this is the chatbot component that I think David previously spoke about in his introduction as well. This is the component that's the, like, I guess, primary generative AI component that exists at the moment within App Inventor. And it's going to take whatever text you give it. In this case, we are saying this text out loud. So it's going to take that particular text and send it to ChatGPT so that it can generate an appropriate response to the text. So any question you're asking or any comment that you have left, ChatGPT is now going to go and interpret it using this particular chatbot component. The third component is the text to speech component. So whenever ChatGPT is done analyzing whatever text it's been given, it's going to generate an appropriate response. So it's going to say, answer a specific question that you asked. And you ultimately want that text to be translated back into speech so that the app can say those things out loud to it. So, for example, if I ask the app, oh, what's the weather today? Then the app's going to say, oh, the weather's like nice and sunny, for example. So we also want the app to converse back with us rather than just putting it in text so that it feels like we're having a real-time conversation with it. So this is the first part of the application where we just designed this sort of step-by-step process of like putting specific user interface elements on the screen. And this is the part that has already been given to you as part of the file that you uploaded. Now, ideally, when you're building an app from scratch, all these components you would be coding out. And we will share tutorials on how to go about doing that so that you can try it on your own time, like following this session. But for this session, we are actually going to have you code what the application does in the backend. So when I say backend, it basically means that you have all these user interface elements, and now you need to tell your app what sort of functionality these elements should perform, say when the button is clicked or like when a specific element is being interacted with on the front end. So yeah, in order to do that, once you're done like looking through this particular screen, on the top right-hand corner, there is this button called blocks, which is what you're going to click on. And this should take you to this screen, ideally from the file that you uploaded. I'll pause here for a second. Are there any like pressing questions before I start going into this?
I think the Q&A is empty now. I think they're able to follow through. So, and
Okay.
I'll keep answering any questions.
Okay. Yeah. But I'll also anyways stop periodically just to make sure that everyone's able to follow along. I want to make sure I'm not going too quickly. Okay. So yeah, once you click on the blocks button on the top right-hand corner, this is the screen that you should see ideally. Now, these components are what we call blocks, and App Inventor uses this form of coding called block-based programming. So we use these programming blocks and we join them together to have our user interface elements perform some functions. And we'll walk you through what each of these blocks mean and what function is specifically performing with respect to a user interface element on the main app screen. So this is the first block that we're going to go over. This is a block that we typically call in computer science an event handler coding block. So what an event handler basically does is it tells the app what to do when a certain button is clicked, for example, on the screen. So in this case, this block is saying when chat.click, which means when the chat button is clicked, what should the app do? That's what this block is going to convey. So in this case, our chat button is actually the microphone picture that we had uploaded on our screen. So we're going to convey to the application what to do when this particular mic button is clicked on the app. So in this case, what we would want to do is when the button is clicked, we want it to send some sort of signal or some sort of message to the speech recognizer component, which was the invisible component that we still had in our main app screen. So when this button is clicked, what we want the speech recognizer to do is we want it to get some text. Now, how is it going to get the text? Now, when you click the button, it's going to ask you to say whatever you want to convey to ChatGPT, right? So for example, if I wanted to ask, how's the weather today? The speech recognizer component is going to take that speech and convert it to written text, which all happens in the background. And you don't need to worry too much about how that happens. Just know that the speech recognizer component is able to convert that to text. And this text is what's going to be processed now in the next step. So after the speech recognizer receives this input via voice, now it has to process this input. It converts it to text first, and then it sends it to ChatGPT via the chatbot component. So as you can see, in this particular block, it reads very similar to like conversation language. It just says that when speech recognizer, after getting text, which means once the speech recognizer receives input, what do you do next? That's what this particular block is addressing. So in this case, this block is gonna send this message to ChatGPT. So it's gonna use the .converse function to send this particular question to ChatGPT and get a response from it based on the text that you supplied. But before we proceed, we're gonna add some additional functionality to it. So just to keep in mind, I think on the main file that we gave you, some of these components or blocks were sort of disconnected. So your job is to drag and drop it into this particular block as shown. I'm going to pause there just for a second to make sure that you got a chance to do that, because I think I didn't mention it earlier. But make sure that you just drag and drop the component into the specific, it's like a puzzle piece, and just make sure that you put it into it. And it will click. It'll give you a click sound when you're able to join it together. Cool. I'm going to continue. So as I was saying, we're going to add one feature before we continue going over these blocks. So as a first step, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the blocks panel on the left-hand side of the screen, and we're going to click on the chatbot component over there. And when you click on that, you will see this sort of menu open up from which you can select any block that you want. So keep in mind the blocks that are already on the screen were also selected in a very similar manner. So from the left-hand pane, we selected whichever component we wanted, and we pulled out a specific block onto the screen. So as a first step for this particular block, you're going to click on chatbot, and then you're going to pull specifically the component that says set chatbot system2. And as you can see, when you sort of hover over that particular component, it tells you exactly what that component is supposed to do as well. So when you're first using App Inventor, you obviously won't be familiar with every single block that's available on this menu to pick from. So what you can do is sort of look through the different options, and if they don't intuitively make sense to you, you can hover over it to see what particular functionality this component can perform, and then pull the one that's most relevant to you accordingly. So in this case, this particular block is supposed to take a given value, and it's supposed to set the tone of the conversation. So for example, when interacting with ChatGPT, sometimes you wanted to assume a specific role of a specific person so that you're able to have a better and more productive conversation with it, and maybe a more fun conversation. So for example, in this case, it can be something like, oh, you're a funny person, I want to have a sort of funny conversation with you, I want you to crack jokes, for example. So you would ideally want ChatGPT to assume a more humorous role to be able to do so. So in this case, you're going to click on that particular block which says chatbot.system2, set chatbot.system2, and you're going to drag that out. Once you drag that out, you're actually going to go ahead and attach it just above the call block that we had over here. So this particular block is now going to decide what role to assign to ChatGPT before it processes the input that it got from the speech recognizer or from the microphone button on the screen. So in this case, since we are building a college admissions app, maybe we can have it be a college admissions counselor. That can be the role that ChatGPT assumes. So in order to be able to do that, you're going to once again click on the left pane of your screen and pull out the text component from it. So these are the steps to do so. So you click on text on the left-hand corner, and then you'll pull the first block at the very top, which is basically just an empty string. And within the string, you can specify what particular role you want ChatGPT to assume. So in this case, once I click on that particular block, I'm going to drag it and place it right over here next to the chatbot.system2 component. I'm going to pause just for a second. Cool. And as you can see, what you're going to do is type out a specific role you want ChatGPT to assume. So in this case, we're going to tell ChatGPT to assume the role of a college admissions counselor so that it can give you advice on applying to colleges. You are free to try out any role you want, even with this tutorial. This is just one example that I'm giving, which you can try out, especially if you want ChatGPT to help you out with college applications. I'm going to pause for a second just so that you can think through this for a minute and think about what role you want ChatGPT to assume. Cool. So just to reiterate, so when this particular block is called, the following things happen. So it goes very sequentially. So the first thing is the speech recognizer. It will get the text from the words that you just spoke out loud. And then as a first step, it's going to set ChatGPT to a particular role that you have assigned it. And then following that, it's going to send the text that it just curated, and it's going to send that to ChatGPT to get a specific response from it. Now let's look at the next block on the screen, which is the third one on the left. So once ChatGPT generates a specific response, this response is now going to be sent to the text-to-speech component that we had on our like invisible list of components on our screen, so that it can respond to the app user via speech itself. So ideally, once ChatGPT like sort of processes the output, you're going to hear the output coming from your phone itself on the app. So what will end up happening is you'll click on the button, you will ask ChatGPT a specific question, and then you'll listen to the app for a response, and make sure that your phone volume is turned up. Otherwise, you're not going to like get a specific response from it. And also be patient, because it takes some time for ChatGPT to be able to process the output and for it to be sent to the text-to-speech components so that the app is able to tell you what ChatGPT said. So make sure you give it some time. The final component that you have is the reset component. And this is the component that will sort of reset the conversation itself or make ChatGPT start a brand new conversation when the restart button is clicked. So when the new conversation button from your main user interface is clicked, this component is triggered just so that you reset the entire conversation and you basically start over. So yeah, once you do all these things, you'll be done building a very basic version of a ChatGPT counselor, college counselor application. And as a next step, always with building any sort of application, you always want to test it out. You want to see if it works as expected before you give off your application to anyone. And this is exactly what we're going to do as part of our tutorial. So yeah, as a next step, the first thing you're going to do is pull up your phone once you're done joining all these blocks together. Take your phone, make sure that the phone is connected to the same Wi-Fi network as the laptop that you're using. And you're going to go to either the Play Store or the App Store, depending on what phone you're using. And you're going to look up MIT App Inventor and download the application. I'm gonna pause for a solid minute over here so that you have a chance to do so if you haven't done it already. Yeah, I'll just set a timer for myself, but I'll give you 1 minute to make sure that you're able to find the app on the App Store and you're also able to download it. It might take a minute or so. I'm gonna wait. Yeah. Meanwhile, if there are any questions, let me know and I can help answer it. Yeah. Cool. I think I'll go ahead. So once you download the app, as you can see the second screen over here, this is what should ideally show up when you open up the app on your phone. And you're going to hit the continue button. And on the next screen, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see the screen on the extreme right on my screen. And you'll be asked to either enter a specific code or scan a QR code, and we'll tell you how to do that in a second. But just make sure that you get to this particular screen on your phone. Regardless of what phone you're using, this is what you should ideally see. Yeah. Cool. So just to reiterate, before you go ahead, your phone should be on the same Wi-Fi as your computer. Now, what you're going to do is on your laptop, you will look at the main screen that we have already been using, and you're going to look at the top band and select the second option called Connect. So look at the Connect dropdown and select the first option, which is called AI Companion. This is the option that you're going to be used to connect the app that you just built on your laptop to your phone so that you can test it out. So once you hit on AI Companion, it's going to pull up a QR code or a 6-character code. Both of those should show up on your screen. And that's the QR code that you're either going to scan using your phone or you're going to enter that 6-letter code. And once you do that, you should be able to have the app running on your phone. I'm going to give a minute again to get that set up. You can either scan the code or if somehow for some reason your camera is not working or if the QR code doesn't work, try to enter the code manually. It's just a 6-character code. And you can get that by clicking on the AI Companion option in the dropdown. Cool. I think I'll continue. Yes. So once you pull up the code, it should pull up the app that we just built. The user interface should look identical to what you just built on your laptop. Now, some of the elements might not look perfect. It's possible that your button looks very stretched or it's not proportionate to your screen size. This is something that you can adjust on your application later. But as a first step, you should see at least the 3 components that we saw on the main screen, which is the Talk with ChatGPT text, the main microphone button, and the new conversation button as well. And to test out your application, you're going to have a conversation with ChatGPT. So when you click on the microphone button, it should ask you whether you want to start recording what you want to ask ChatGPT. So once you hit start recording, you can ask ChatGPT any question you want. So these are some sample questions that I have pulled up on the screen. So you can first ask ChatGPT like what role you're playing, like what role are you playing. So to that, ChatGPT should ideally say that, oh, I'm a college admissions counselor, because that's the role you specifically assigned it. And it's going to tell you how it can help you out specifically. So once you like ask ChatGPT your question, you're going to hit finish recording, and then you're gonna wait for a response. Now this might take like a solid minute, because basically the steps that we went through block-based programming, it's gonna go through all those steps. It's gonna take the like speech that you just like said out loud, convert that to text, send that to the chatbot component, and then send it back once ChatGPT has generated a response. So the entire process might take a minute. So just make sure you give it a minute, and also turn your phone volume high up, and you should ideally hear ChatGPT answer your question out loud. Yeah. These are some sample questions you can ask it. Now I'm gonna pause here for like I think at least 3 or 4 minutes, because I want to make sure that you guys have this app working. Yeah, and just make sure you're giving it enough time to generate a response. Maybe you can try out 1 or 2 questions to make sure that you have like thoroughly tested your application out. So as a thumb rule, whenever you build any application, you should be testing it out. And if there is any error, you should also go back and ideally debug your application so that you're able to fix those errors. This back and forth practice is super important as you start coding and as you take intro programming classes. If you do, these are things that are typically taught as well, but you can practice these real time using the app that you just built already, which is great. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna pause here again for what, at least 3 minutes or so. And yeah, maybe you can put in the chat when you get something to work so that we know that it's working. Cool. I think I'll pause here. If you guys have any other questions regarding what we just went through, like please keep asking in the chat and we'll try to answer it. But just in the interest of time, I'm gonna move on. So this was a step-by-step version of like one tutorial that you can build, like one particular app that you can build using MIT App Inventor. Like keep in mind, you can basically build any app that you want with it. So there are a lot of tutorials that are already available out there on the main MIT App Inventor website. So if you just like on your browser, if you just try searching for MIT App Inventor, the very first thing that shows up should be the main MIT App Inventor website. And it has a lot of tutorials available there for you to sort of ramp up and learn how to build apps. We'll obviously not have a chance to go over all those with you, but like please feel free to ask any questions you might have, and we'll also put specific links in the chat. And when we send a follow-up email, maybe tomorrow, we'll also add those specific links in so that you can see what kind of apps you can build using MIT App Inventor. So yeah, I think as a discussion, what we're going to do now is spend maybe the next 10 to 15 minutes answering some of the questions that you had in the chat. So I think there were a lot of questions surrounding like, how do you apply to MIT? What is life like at MIT? Like, what are the requirements? Or just maybe there were questions regarding how to build applications, or just general like career advice, college admissions advice. If you have any questions regarding like any of those aspects, now would be a very good time to ask those in the chat if you haven't already. And if you have asked those already, I'll ask our other panelists to maybe say those questions out loud and also try to answer it. And I can also try to answer any question that might be relevant to me. So I'll hand it off to you guys. Since you have been looking over the Q&A, if there were specific questions, please feel free to speak up and answer it right now.
Well, I have seen some questions in the chat regarding the application process to MIT. I think Gisela, you can give some tips about it.
About the application process. Wow. Good question. To be honest, I have forgotten quite a bit of it because it was I think 4 years ago, but the main parts of like being prepared for MIT is just being able to take advantage of the opportunities that you have available to you. So if you're, say, in a rural area, you might not have like a robotics team, right? But that's totally fine. You might have another interest or club that's available near you that you can take advantage of. And that's really what MIT wants to see, right? Because sometimes students might say like, oh, this person, went to this school that had these clubs and was a part of these organizations for a long time. And my school doesn't offer those same things. So the most important part is like, try to find things that you enjoy doing and then making the most of the opportunities that you have. And you don't have to be the best at everything, contrary to what people might think. Like, we are smart students, but you do not have to be the valedictorian. You do not have to have a perfect 32 GPA or a perfect 32 score or whatever GPA that everyone is worried about. Just be you. That's really what we're most focused on, because we don't want a whole student body full of everyone who's exactly the same, right? If everyone had the same background, had the same grades, then that would kind of not be the diversity or the inclusivity that we're trying to look for to try to make all of these technological advances. So don't worry about doing what everyone else is doing. Just do yourself. And that's all you need to do to get into MIT.
And in general, a college application advice I will give is that also take advantage of all the spaces that you have in your application. So if you're in your extracurriculars, you talk a lot like about your technology experience, your volunteering, your teaching experience, and there are some like extracurricular essays or extra essays where you can develop a narrative of other aspects of your life. Take advantage of it very wisely. Like check out, oh, maybe in this essay I will talk about my technology experience in high school. In this other essay I will talk about my family journey and what I become the person I am right now and stuff like that. That's how I craft my application. I try to take advantage of every space, not repeating things, for example. I think that's a nice strategy.
Lots of other good questions. What is a good SAT score to be able to get into MIT? So there is no hard and fast rule. Like, MIT regularly rejects people who have perfect SAT scores. However, there is sort of like what we would call like a minimum of what we kind of hope that you guys have. And you can see that if you look on the admissions website, and it shows you the statistics of the freshman students that are coming in. So I would say if you're looking for what kind of scores to have, look at the admissions page and the statistics so you kind of can gauge where you are at in comparison to like the other potential freshmen. And it changes every year too. So like sometimes it might be 32, it might be 33, it might be 31. So that's why I say definitely check the admissions website to have a better idea.
Also, I see some questions in the chat about if you want to start learning programming, with which language should you start? I think there is no right or wrong answer here, because it will depend of what you want to do. If you want to do more front-end stuff, I think JavaScript could be a nice way. If you want to go more to backend, you can start with Java, you can start with Python. Or if you are new and you want to get familiarized with programming logic, I always recommend App Inventor, because that was the first programming experience I ever had. And I think it was very friendly, like user-friendly, and also it made me less scared of programming. Programming looks like, it used to look like another word for me, like, oh no, it looks very hard, very complex. But platforms like App Inventor make it easy at the beginning, and then I started to learn other languages.
I want to add on that. So I see a lot of questions about textual programming and block coding, and what's the difference about that. A good analogy that I use is I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and the Millennium Falcon is one of my favorite ships. Now, if I want to create a toy Millennium Falcon out of clay, I can really make a very sophisticated Millennium Falcon ship, but it will take much more work and it's much difficult. You have to learn a lot of more basic stuff about clay, understanding how to craft things. But working with block coding is like creating the same ship with a Lego. So the final product is not going to be as sophisticated as creating with the clay, but you can still have a very good vision of what you want to have. And the thing is, the basic logic still aligns. So if you're when you get very comfortable with block coding, then applying that and expanding that to textual-based coding isn't going to be that difficult, because in textual coding, the core lines still align, in the sense of when you're building the Millennium Falcon, the core ideas of what the Millennium Falcon looks like is all the same. It's just that you need to learn the more sophisticated grammars for textual-based codings. So I would say if you have no experience in coding, I think App Inventor or Scratch is a very good place to start learning and getting experience of coding.
Okay, so I see a question about the Zoom session saying it's tailored for students. It was asking if it's tailored for students who already have basic knowledge in coding, or if it's not specifically for parents, and then asking if we can give information if you don't meet the SAT requirements. Okay, so yeah, this session, I'm not sure, Perna, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's pretty open and accessible to anyone in terms of like background. You don't have to have CS to know any of this stuff.
No, not at all. I think this session was actually meant to give you an introduction into what it is like to design an application, and also to just get your feet wet with coding. And the block-based coding environment that we showed you is a very good first introduction into how you can start programming like individually. This is meant for people, like tailored to anyone, like people who have absolutely no coding experience, as well as those that might have like a little bit coding experience but want to develop on it further. And even if you're super proficient in it, this is a great tool to practice your coding further. So you can use MIT App Inventor as a platform to sort of develop your coding skills further. And I think this is something that I mentioned in the very beginning, but App Inventor itself is a tool that's meant to teach everyone coding, not just students, but also parents, teachers, like literally anyone. Like if you are someone who's interested in learning how to program, App Inventor is a very good like first place to start, regardless of where you are at in your career, whether you're a student, whether you are working a full-time job, it doesn't matter. Like App Inventor is meant to give you that very basic scaffolded introduction into programming and computer science. Yeah.
And here's a question that I actually kind of really like. First of all, what is the hardest thing to do as a programmer? I really like that question. There's a saying that when you only truly understand something when you can teach someone about that concept. There's a new version of that, is that you truly only understand it when you can program it. And you will be very surprised of how sophisticated, detailed, and very you have to go through a lot of iteration of debugging to actually really create what you have in your head. And the hardest thing is on the outside, it seems something like a very trivial stuff, but when you start programming it, it's not as trivial as you think it is. So that's the hardest thing as a programmer. There's another question of what's the difference of coding and programming? Well, first of all, that's a textual definition. So some people might say it's the same thing. Personally, how I define it is coding is the act of coding, like you're creating a textual code, or in block coding, you're connecting blocks. That is coding. Programming is something that is not just about coding. It's also about designing something, designing an artifact, and then going through a series of process of creating that artifact. Of course, coding is part of it. So that's how I see the difference between those two things.
David, do you want to answer the question about programming in other languages on App Inventor?
I see. I know some of our undergrads mentioned Apply. So what Apply is basically we're making a new platform where you can create an app with just your natural language description. So you can just say, make me an app that translates English to Spanish, and that app is automatically built on your phone as a working app. Now, how it works on the back end is we are currently creating a textual base that looks like Python code that has a one-to-one mapping with our blocks in App Inventor. So what we do is the generative AI automatically creates this Pythonic code that we are currently creating, and then that Pythonic code is converted into the blocks that you see on the screen. Now, we are also thinking about expanding this to teach students about textual-based coding. So not only can you make App Inventor apps with moving blocks, but you can also create your app by textually typing after learning some of the basic grammars of App Inventor code. Mm-hmm.
You guys have a lot of really great questions.
I know you already answered this question, but there was one that says that, can a college accept you if you have some good IT skills but don't meet the SAT requirements? I know MIT is not test optional anymore, but there are other colleges that are still being test optional after that COVID and everything. I am from a college that was test optional, so when I applied, I didn't took the SAT. Mostly my application was focused on the grades I had in high school, the extracurriculars I did, the awards I had, and the essays, my background in general. So definitely you can enter to a college. What matters is that you generate a great strategy and you can balance your application. So for example, I always recommend that if you see that in high school you had some flaws in your grades, SAT will be a nice option, because then you can like demonstrate that even though you have some low grades maybe in your last years, you still have a great academic level. But if you feel like, oh, my grades in high school are very good, and you feel like, oh, but I don't have too many extracurriculars, I haven't won a lot of awards, maybe that's the place where you should dedicate the most time. So it's very strategic, is to check that everything in your application is 100% like what you want to show, not like one part is 20% and the other one's 80%. The idea is that is a balance. And the other question that they said was, what if I want to do nursing first, but still want to do something in the IT sector? I really like that question too, because here in the States, a lot of colleges and universities have liberal arts education. So when you enter to college, you can dedicate yourself to maybe health, like public health, and also have a computer science minor, computer science major, and stuff like that. So once you enter college, don't feel limited, like, oh, I enter with computer science, I should just attach to that. I know in MIT you have a lot of like, they call the majors with numbers. So I know there is 6-3, 6-8, 6-7. So, it's because they combine like majors, computer science with economics, computer science with electrical engineer. So it's like, don't let go your passions. You can actually study both majors, or one major, one minor, two minors. And just keep that in mind. It's not like, oh, I always wanted to be a musician but also a mathematician, I have to keep up on one dream. No, actually college is for follow both dreams.
Ooh, another question. Tips on writing compelling supplementals that showcase your key character aspects. What aspects of your personality should you highlight in your application? That's a really good question. I think this kind of depends on you as a person, right? I can't really give like one stock advice for everybody because everyone's different and you can't all have the same compelling and memorable stories. But I would think back on specifically like any experiences that you have that you feel shaped who you are as a person. So if that's something that you identify with, it could be like sports. Some people have been playing sports their entire life and they've gotten this huge, deep commitment and passion to it. Other people have done art, or maybe people are more active in their community. So there's not really like a tip of like what you should do when you're writing it, but just think about like if you were to give a short elevator pitch to someone, which is like a short explanation of who you are as a person, what would be the thing that you'd want them to walk away from that conversation remembering about you? And that's something that I use when I write my own supplementals, and it kind of helps me focus on the most important parts. Oh, in terms of tips on the part about your personality, I would highlight your perseverance or your resilience, because specifically at MIT, you will fail at some point. You're gonna either fail an exam, fail a class, fail something, but it will happen. Probably in freshman year, but it's going to happen. And usually for a lot of students, when they get to that first failure, they kind of just fall apart and they just don't know what to do. And it kind of spirals into a negative cycle. So I would definitely hone on your ability to persevere despite roadblocks, obstacles, and failures, and how to use that to sort of fail better. So it's okay if you keep failing, but try to make it so that you're failing up instead of like stuck in one spot. Ooh, okay. So any weight for sports and applications. MIT does not recruit for sports. It's purely merit-based. So it's really up to you if you want to include things about sports. I would probably include that if you have a leadership position. But if it's just something where it's like you went once a week and you kind of did it so you can have something written on your resume, I probably would focus mostly on other things besides that. So just keep that in mind, that like you could be great at sports, you could get all of these awards, but MIT really cares about if you can handle the academic rigor first, and then like you can explore those other parts of like sports and, you know, extracurriculars. Lots of other good questions. Oh my gosh, I cannot keep up with all of these. So I don't know, Perna, if you want me to answer all of these because they're just like continuously coming in. I know we do have a set
I think
time.
maybe I can maybe point out one or two more questions that you
Yes.
can answer. And let's see. I think one question is like regarding community service and how important that is for, like, I guess MIT or like any college for that matter when applying. And I think I guess I can start off by answering. Yes, I mean, it is important if that's something that you like closely resonate with, and the tools that you build or any activities that you do, you want to specifically help other people, then community service or any sort of engagement with nonprofit organizations is an excellent way to give back to the community. So really like taking the skills that you are acquiring through your coursework or through your classes and applying that to serve others, like that's a very rewarding way to give back to the community and also to exercise and like really use your skills. And that's something that I think for me, I enjoyed doing that in high school a lot. And that certainly did help like heavily, I would say, for my college applications as well. But that's something I continued doing during undergrad as well. And not necessarily for the purpose of like applying to grad school or for like an overarching goal. I think I just based on the research that I do, I really enjoy like sort of outreach work, working with nonprofits and giving back to the community. So that's something that I personally enjoy doing on a daily basis. So I try to do as many of these events as I can given my schedule. So yeah, and yes, it does like I guess contribute very positively to a college application as well. So if you have engaged in such activities in the past, definitely do include it on your college applications. Like, this is something that colleges do consider pretty seriously. Yeah. Let's see. And there's a question on tips for interviewing. Like, did you guys have to interview for MIT for undergrad? I don't know. Like, I wasn't at MIT for my undergrad, so
So it is not required, but it is encouraged to interview for MIT. I did interview. Actually, it was a funny story. My AP computer science teacher, her husband was my interviewer. So it was like a small world. I did not realize that he had gone to MIT before. So we kind of already had a rapport there just from the fact that like he's my teacher's husband. And the interview was not like intense where you think like, oh, I'm going to say the wrong thing and they're going to immediately just like strike me off the list. No, it's a very casual conversational interview. They're not going to be looking at your resume and be like, oh, I noticed you did this. Tell me more about that and grill you on everything. No, they really just want to see if you're able to explain your experiences in a way that shows that you're going to continue that at MIT and that you're not simply just applying there just for the name or for other reasons. They want to know like your actual true passions and motivations behind it.
There's a question on grad school applications, so I can talk about that for a second. So the GRE, like, it's first of all not mandatory for all schools. It also depends on what program you're applying for. So I applied for a PhD program directly straight out of undergrad. And for PhD programs, more often than not, the GRE is not mandatory. It really depends on the schools that you apply to. But for me, I think I was in a position where I needed the GRE for only one of the schools that I applied to for grad school. But for a master's program, it's pretty typical for them to have GRE be like a required part of your application. So it does matter in the sense that your GRE score is like used more often than not as like this initial filter because they receive a lot of applications, like a lot of applications, right? So in order to filter applicants out in the initial stage, the GRE might be used as a critical factor. So it's obviously important if you do decide to submit it, especially if it's optional and not required, make sure you're submitting it only if it like contributes positively to your application. That being said, the GRE is not the only thing that sort of decides whether you get into a school or not. With grad school applications, I think your essays, your letters of recommendation from people you've worked with in your undergrad, your grades in your undergrad, those things sort of matter more or equally. If anything, like the GRE is just one of the many things that they consider. It's a very like holistic view of your application. So you definitely want to make sure you're paying attention to the other aspects of your application as well. It's not the end of the day if you don't have the best GRE score, the other aspects of your application can definitely like make up for it. I can definitely say that about like grad school. That being said, if you do have a good score, that can also be sort of a deciding factor if it comes down to two applicants at the end of the day and they have just one spot left. So having a good score is always an advantage. But it's not a make or break situation. So just keep that in mind when you like don't get too worked up if you don't have the best GRE score. Make sure that you have other things, like make sure you're doing research in your undergrad, like you maybe are teaching an undergrad. These things count a lot more, like for grad school applications, I can say that. And make sure you're building very good relations with the professors that you work with or just the mentors you work with, or if you do an internship, make sure you have a good relationship with the manager who's supervising you directly. All these are people who can like attest to your skills and write you a really good letter of recommendation rather than a very generic one when you apply for grad school. Like those things end up really counting for a lot more. Like I think when applying to grad school, it's most important that in your undergrad you have really taken initiative and you've gone out of your way to like sort of engage in very specific activities that will tailor to your research area, and it will also contribute positively to your application. But yeah, just make sure that you're able to package things well. A lot of like application writing in general, whether that's undergrad or grad school, is you've obviously engaged in a lot of activities regardless of whether you're in high school or an undergrad, but it's how you're able to sort of present that well, and you're able to package it well into your essay and other aspects of your application, whether that's your resume or a portfolio if you decide to make one. So it's how you present your work that ends up mattering in some scenarios a lot more. So yeah, there are a lot of tips available out there regarding that, and you're also welcome to like email us to sort of get a little bit more feedback. But yeah, and don't get intimidated by like the fact that I have to apply to like so many colleges. You can definitely do it. I think just take it like step by step and you'll definitely get there. Yeah.
Oh, I do want to mention, like, if you guys are applying to multiple colleges, I know a lot of people probably have similar questions between the colleges, so I would research the questions because there's a lot of overlap, and it'll be easier for you guys to just write one essay that you just tweak depending on like which college it's for. Like this one's asking like, oh, what is describe a time where you overcome a challenge. Pretty much every college asks that question. They might phrase it slightly differently. So I would read all of them and make sure that you have like a generic stock essay for different types of essay questions. That way you can just tweak it and go back to it instead of having to write completely new essays for every single one. I think I ended up having about 8 stock essays when I was applying, just because some colleges had 4 questions, some had 3. So try to have like 8 to 10 question types ready to go. It'll speed up the process a lot.
Cool. I think I'm gonna stop here because I think we are nearing like closing time. But if you guys have any other questions, like we'll also be sending out like a survey either tomorrow or day after. Like it's like a feedback form, and on that, if you have maybe any specific questions, you can like jot that down and we'll convey it to you in some shape or form following that. So yeah, please feel free to ask any other questions you might have, but I think I'll hand it over to Joe now. Yeah.
Oh my God, guys, that was awesome. Thank you for so many questions. It says here that you answered 75 of them over text, and more of them certainly were answered, vocally. We've had all sorts of stuff come in. What an awesome event. So thank you so much for taking the time today. This was really an incredible event, and I can't thank everybody at App Inventor enough for making this possible. For those who are still here 90 minutes later, I hope you guys had a great time. We will be posting the recording on our YouTube channel, and the App Inventor folks may be posting this places as well. Look out for a follow-up email from us. Make sure you get those apps in for this year's app challenge. 2 weeks to go. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks again to everybody who made this possible. Looking forward to seeing all your apps come in before the deadline. Have a great night, everybody.